Newstalk 610 CKTB is proud to support Help Kids Shine, a month-long campaign to raise funds and awareness for the Niagara Children's Center. Money raised will benefit children and families right here in Niagara. The primary need is funding for additional therapy services. You can go to our website, 610ckTB.com, to see the 12 ambassadors that are representing the Niagara Children's Center for the 2017 campaign, and to truly see what the center can do. Now, besides awareness, which is always great to raise, also looking to raise some funds. You can donate online at 610ckTB.com/helpkidsshine. You could become a Help Kids Shine Club monthly giving club member by calling 905-688-3550 or drop by the Niagara Children's Center and to see the miracles in person that go on inside, and you can donate on site. Now, I don't know if she would describe her work as miraculous, but joining us on the program right now, an occupational therapist with the Niagara Children's Center, Stephanie Wilton. Duncan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. How long have you been an OT?
Oh, that's an embarrassing question. I've been an OT for over 35 years.
If nothing else, I ask great embarrassing questions of people. What drew you, 35 years ago, what drew you into being an occupational therapist?
Oh, okay. Well, I grew up in a family where my older sister has cerebral palsy, and she's quite physically involved. She's uses a wheelchair and needs help with feeding, and she wasn't able to speak, and she learned to communicate by stamping her feet with Morse code and using one foot for a dot and one for a dash. So I think all my life I looked up to her and saw some of the struggles that she had in life, and just really always felt like I was standing up for her and wanting her to have the same experiences that I was able to have, and that really just impacted my life and made me very comfortable working with people who did things differently and wanting to support them in any way that I could.
Wow, that's an amazing story. She's
an amazing woman.
It's amazing when we look at the name of the building, and back when your sister, and I don't know if she went there, but it was called the Niagara Crippled Children's,
yes.
and now it's just the Niagara Children's Center. But it's amazing how far we've come in terms of treatment and therapy and for people who are like your sister, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she grew up in Ottawa, but it was the Ottawa Crippled Children's Center. And, it's very encouraging to see how we've become a society that's moving towards accepting diversity, and that people can be different, and there's strengths and wonderful gifts that they can give us, and we can give them, and it isn't a matter of can and can't do, or able and not able.
Well, your sister had cerebral palsy. Is there any condition that you specifically work with, or as an occupational therapist, you have a variety of patients with which you deal with?
Well, over the years, I've worked with a large variety of children with different challenges, but right now, most of the children that I see have autism spectrum disorders. So they're somewhere on the spectrum and have those kinds of challenges with communication, social interactions, sensory processing, sensory sensitivities or needs, all the things that go into that package.
What would your role then be? As an occupational therapist, what are you trying to help the children do better, I guess?
Okay, well, occupation is a funny term because we don't think of kids as having occupations.
They're not working quite yet.
Not quite yet, but they are working hard because they're learning how to do the daily tasks that they need to, like being able to feed themselves and eat and get dressed and toilet training, and they're learning how to play. Play is a huge occupation for children. That's how they learn about their bodies, how they learn to use their bodies, how they learn about the world, and how problem solving and creative thinking. So I work with children in those areas, the motor skills, some sensory processing, the daily activities that they need to learn to do. Sometimes it involves schoolwork, which we do think of as more as work. But the word occupation really means what is occupying them and what would be their roles as children.
And I guess a brief way to think of it is often physiotherapy thought of as gross motor skills and occupational therapy thought of more as fine motor skills, or is that too fine a point?
Well, that's a very black and white definition, and I think it's a good starting place, although we certainly look at the whole child. I do a lot of work in the gym with children as well, and certainly whether it involves how comfortable they are with movement and larger motor skills, and certainly the physiotherapists incorporate small motor activities into their sessions as well, as children are also working on their gross motor. So there can be some overlap. It can be confusing. We can sometimes use similar activities, but for different purposes even when we work with other disciplines together. So when we work with speech therapists too, we can to the parents look like we're doing the same activities, but we may be using them for different purposes. So in a broad way, yes, gross motor, fine motor, but there is so much more to doing things than just having fine motor skills. One of the things, and you talked about it, and explain to us in greater depth, when we think of the Niagara Children's Center, oftentimes we think of, there's a mobility issue, sometimes there's a communications issue, but as you said, that with children on the autism spectrum, that sometimes there's also sensory issues there as well. So describe what is happening there, and what are we doing, or what are you and your team doing in terms of dealing with sensory issues for children? Well, parents will come in and they may say that their child eats a very limited diet, or that they have a lot of trouble having bath or keeping their clothes on, or they don't like going on swings and slides. And those are red flags that alert us to, what might be underlying why they don't do that. So then, we look at a number of things like strength and coordination and motor skills, but we also include assessments where we look at sensory processing. So we will talk to the parents and gather information from them about different sensory systems like hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching is a very important one, being touched, awareness, body awareness and awareness of movement. So we gather information on those different systems, and we see if there are oversensitivities, undersensitivities, if there's patterns for the way the child responds. And that's a little bit of a simplified explanation, but then if we do see those patterns, sometimes, we all have preferences and likes and dislikes, so sometimes it isn't something that really interferes significantly, but sometimes there can be patterns that really do impact whether a child is comfortable in a noisy environment, or standing close to other children, or playing with finger paint and sand and things. So we start to try to, first of all, inform the parents and share that information so that we're giving parents a new lens, a new way of looking at why their child might behave a certain way in a certain environment. And that way, the parents are learning that they can maybe understand and put themselves in their child's place, and then make some changes to the environment or what they're expecting of the child. So they might always have a cloth when their child is finger painting, or be a little more gentle in their encouragement of those kinds of activities, wanting to entice them but not wanting to push them to the point that the child's too uncomfortable. Or it might impact the kind of clothing that they buy for their child, or how noisy and busy an environment they might take the child into, knowing that maybe a birthday party is something the child wants to go to, but it's going to overwhelm them. So maybe then they learn that, okay, we'll just come for a few minutes, and then we'll have that positive experience, but we'll be able to leave before it becomes a negative experience for everybody. So a lot goes into sharing information with the parents, and helping them put themselves in the child's place and see what they might be experiencing. And that helps equip them to have skills so that they can start to use and interpret in any environment wherever they are. Wow, so fascinating. it's kind of an invisible difficulty, and so it's really gratifying when you're working and explaining to a parent, and you start talking, and then they start sharing experiences, and you see the light bulb come on, and their eyes light up, and that's like, oh, maybe that's why they always do that, or I've always wondered why they do that. I thought they were just being difficult
or silly, or sometimes you describe it. Oh, come on! Stop being silly. It's a shirt.
Oh, that's right.
What does this shirt have to do? And it's like, yeah, but you do not have the stimulus response to and it's difficult as a parent. I find it difficult to get into the head of my 9-year-old on what was she thinking. And I'm like, I don't know what she was thinking. Let alone when it's something that is so disabling or bothersome as lights or sounds or how things feel or how things taste. I mean, we could never put ourselves in that position.
And it's something that all happens on such a subconscious level that we just automatically process and respond to, or don't respond to sensory input. Our brains can just dampen, and we only pay attention to what's most important. But for kids who are flooded and bombarded, then the world becomes an overwhelming experience sometimes. And so, it's hard to understand that until you start talking about it and explaining it.
Stephanie, we've run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure and insightful about what you do as an occupational therapist and more of the great stuff that goes on at the Niagara Children's Center. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Stephanie Wilton Duncan is an occupational therapist with the Niagara Children's Center. Once again, in support of our Help Kids Shine campaign, 3 ways for you to donate. You can go online at www.610ckTB.com/helpkidshine. You can become a Help Kids Shine Club monthly member by calling 905-688-3550. Or you can also drop by the Niagara Children's Center and see the miracles that go on inside and donate on site.